Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're going to be creating a color palette, aka a color picker. So now if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I use a site known as Flat UI Colors for the color palette or the colors. So this is the one, so I'm going to be creating it exactly like that website. So it also has a footer, and in my website as well you can see the footer. So it says Hank UI palette version 1 by Hank UI Colors. Now in this one, when you click, it shows a pop-up and the color gets shown in your clipboard. So basically it gets copied in your clipboard, which you can paste it later on. So these are the text that gets generated in the main site. Now in my site as well, when you click, it shows a copied text which basically sets the value in your clipboard, and you can check it out. So it is the same exact color, so it has that. So yeah, there's that. So this is the project that we're going to be building using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. I hope you guys learned something from this. So without any ado, let's get started and let's see how to create this. So this is my index.html file, and in my main.css file I have already added the font families, the Barlow and Frigello one, which we're going to be using in this project, and I have added margin padding to 0 and border box to box sizing and font family by default to Barlow. And we're going to be adding font size 62.5% because we want one rem which would have been equal to 16 pixels to now be equal to 10 pixels, since we're going to be using rem units in this project so that it has that responsiveness. And so in our HTML file, so this is a finished project which you can see has a container which holds these colors. So we're going to first create a container class. Let's call it container, and inside here we're going to give all these color a common class of color and a unique class of color 1 through 20. So we have color hyphen, and I'm going to be adding 1 through 20 since I've already created down. So I'll just copy and paste it so that I don't really need to do it again. So our container is done with 20 different classes of color. Now the finished project, as you can see, it also has a footer which says Hank UI palette version 1 by Hank UI Colors. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna be creating a footer. So let's create a footer, or let's just do the copied text which appears whenever we click the color box. So let's call it copied, and inside here we're gonna be adding or let's add here do not show class so that by default it doesn't really show up. And inside here I'm going to be creating a class of copied box, inside of which we're going to add h1 with the text of copied, and just underneath that we're going to have another class of value, and inside this we're going to have h6 with RGB. So later on with JavaScript we're going to be changing this RGB value whenever we click on any color. So now let's add the footer which has Hank UI palette version 1 by Hank UI Colors. So this is our HTML, it's done. Now let's see our CSS. So this is the thing, and yeah, so we're done with the HTML. Let's see the CSS now. So in the CSS, the first thing that we're gonna do is giving our body a height. So let's add 100 viewport height. Let's add min height and a width of 100 viewport width, and let's add display flex to this, and justify corner center and align items center so that it is at the center of the screen. The container is at the center along with the text, and flex direction to column so that it is on different separate columns. So yeah, there's that. So now let's add a bit of styling to the container. We're gonna add height and width. So height's gonna be 85 viewport height and width's gonna be 100 viewport width. So we want it to be the full screen width, and we're gonna add display flex and flex flow to row wrap, because the colors we want those color box to wrap up. And then we're gonna style the color class, so the common class that each has. So we're gonna use the calc function, and we're gonna divide 100% by 5 since we're gonna have 5 box in one single row. So we're gonna divide that, which would be 20%, and we're gonna add a height of 25% of the total height of the container. Now this is what it looks like. So we have the color class already created. Now let's add the names which we have. So you could just directly add here the name just like this. So you could add this turquoise or whatever it says, and emerald and Peter River. So you could add the names here directly, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create another div which I'm gonna name as color name, and inside of which I'm gonna be adding these colors. So color name again, and let's add it a few more times. Now since I have already created these colors, these classes, and have the names already, so what I'm gonna do is I'll just copy and paste that. So I have all the color name in the div with class color name, as you can see. Now when we save, you can just see here, so we have all the names here. Now let's position this at the bottom right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the color name, and we're gonna add position absolute, and since this is absolute, we need the parent to be position relative, and then we're gonna add bottom 5% and right 2%, so that it is at the right bottom corner. And let's add the color to white. Now since the background is white, you wouldn't really see anything, so we need to fill in those colors. So let's fill up those colors. So I'm gonna add color 1, and I'm gonna be copy pasting what I have done. So I'll just paste in this color. So this is for the first one, and I'll just paste in the rest. You could check out the description. So I will be adding the finished project, so I'll be adding the Google Drive link. You can check that out. So this is how it looks like. It is starting to look exactly like our finished project. So now let's remove the border. So as you can see, it's neat and clean. Now we're going to be doing the hover effect. So whenever we hover over the color, you see that the copy text that appears. So I'm going to be using the pseudo element before in the color div, and we'll add a content of copy, so which appears here, and we'll just add this at the dead center. So we're going to be using position absolute with top 50%, left 50%, and transform translate of -50%, -50%, so that it comes at the dead center. And we're going to be adding color white, so that it is white. Now we would also need to add a bit of padding, since we're going to be adding a border to it. So let's add a bit of padding, and now let's add the font family. So this is where we're going to be using the Fragile 1 font. So this is the font family, and we're going to add the text align to center, so that the text is center. So it is already, but let's just add that. And now let's add border of 0.1 rem solid and white background, and a bit of size to the font size, so 2 rem, and opacity of 0, and visibility of hidden, because by default it wouldn't really be visible. We want it to show up whenever we hover, and we're gonna add a bit of transition. So let's add the hover effect. So whenever we hover, we want the before to have the opacity of 0.7, or let's add 0.85, and visibility to be hidden. Now this is what you see. So whenever we hover, you have that. Now let's add a bit of border radius. The edges are sharp now, so when we add border radius, it's going to be a bit curved. So it's starting to look like the project. So we have our divs ready, the color divs actually. So now whenever we click, you see that the pop-up shows up. It covers the entire screen with that color which we click, and then the copied text. So next thing that we're gonna do is we haven't given any font size to the color div, the color names. So let's give it a bit of font size, and now let's work onto the hover effect which we get whenever we click. So we're gonna add position absolute to the copied div, height of 100 viewport height, and a width of 100 viewport width, so that it takes the entire screen. so you see the color blue or red, whichever you click the entire screen. And align items and justify content to center, so that everything is at the center. And we're gonna have the color as white. And let's add a background of this, so you see, so this is how it's gonna look. We're gonna manually change this background later on using, dynamically we're gonna be changing that in JavaScript. As of now, let's give a manual color of turquoise or so. I don't know if this is turquoise, yeah, kind of like emerald or so. So in the copied box, I'm gonna be giving a width and padding of 5 rem top and bottom and 0 left and right, and display flex direction to column, and justify content and align items to center both, and font size of 6 rem. So it's trying to look exactly like that. And we're gonna add the animation fade in, which we're gonna create just in a second, and we'll give it the timer and the effect, which is ease. Now the H1, which has the copied text with exclamation, we want that to have a background of a bit whitish color, so we're gonna have RGBA with an opacity of 0.3 and a width of 100%. Now we also need to add here text align center, or else it wouldn't be at the center, so we have that at the center. And we also need to add a bit of padding on the top and bottom, so we're gonna add 2 rem of padding top and bottom and 0 left and right. So it's exactly now like this. Now let's add in a bit of margin to the value, the RGBA. So we're gonna add margin top of 2 rem. Alright, now let's work on the keyframes of the animation fade in. So at 0% we want it, so as you can see, whenever we click, it stays for some time and then it fades in. So for 0 to 50% we want it to have the 100% width, and let's add in a height of 60% for the copied box, and font size of 6 rem, which we have already, and opacity of 1 and visibility of visible. And we're gonna have these same properties for the 50%, because we want it to stay for some time, and when it is 100% we want it to just get vanished. So we're gonna have width 0, height 0, font size of 0, and opacity of 0, visibility hidden. As you can see, it goes out. Now the video is a bit fast forwarded, so you won't actually see the animation properly, but when you add the specific timings and when you do it on your own, you're going to be seeing stuff exactly the way it should. So yeah, there's that. And once we're done with that, let's add the do not show class, which has display none property, meaning that it won't really show, which we will use only when we click. So that's going to be from the JavaScript. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to style our footer with position absolute. We're going to give a bottom value of 1% or so, and we're going to position it right 2 rem. Let's add 2%, and let's add font size of 1.3 rem, and this, let's adjust this to 3 rem, 3%. So this is that. Now if I remove this do not show class, and you could see that the footer is still visible, so we want to add a z index to our footer so that it doesn't show up when we click on any color and this pop-up shows up of copy. So we're gonna add a z index of 10 on the copy so that it is above that, so it wouldn't really show up. And do not show here as well, and we also would add z index of 5 to the footer so that it stays beneath that. And now let's add a bit of media query to add the responsiveness. So it's gonna be for screen of max width of 680 pixels. So we want the font size, so this is the reason we have the font as percentage instead of pixels. So now it's going to be 50%, so now the rem units would behave differently. and for 480 pixel of max width, we're going to be having this as 40 pixel or as 40%. So our media queries are done. Now let's add in the functionality using our JavaScript. So let's add in the script tag, and inside here let's get the DOM units, the DOM stuff. So first create the variables. So first I'm going to be getting all the color inside a colors variable with query selector all, and then I'd get the copied text which takes the entire screen using again query selector, and we'll store it in a variable named as copied, and then we would use this value for getting or storing the value class, which has this h6, which we're going to be adding the inner HTML using JavaScript, the RGB value, and we're going to add a variable of background color. So as of now, let's keep it as 0. Now let's add an event listener to each of the colors. So we're going to use for each function. So for each color inside colors, we want to add event listener to each color, and that's going to be click. So whenever we click on any color, we want to have a function, so which would basically get this. So what we want to do is as you can see, whenever we click, it stores that in our clipboard. So whenever we click, we get the RGB value on our clipboard. So whenever we click, we need to get the RGB value of that specific color. So we're going to use the background color, and we'll store the color of the color div. So we're going to use window.computedStyle of the color, and we're going to get the background color of that, and we'll store it in a variable named background color. And now we're going to use navigator.clipboard write text, and then here we're going to be pasting in the variable that is background color. So now whenever we click onto any of the color box, we're going to have the RGB value of that specific box in our clipboard. Now background color, I can just console log and see. So whenever I click, let's open the console. So as you can see, whenever you wait, hold on a second. Everything's fine here. Yeah, so I have written here colors, which should have been color. So yeah, now when you click, you have the background color. So when you click, you can see the RGB value. So now the text is in your clipboard. Now whenever we click, we want the copied text to take the entire width. First, let's add the inner HTML of the value, the h6, as the background color, so that specific RGB value, and the copied now we need to remove that class. So first we're going to add the background color of the copied to the background color that we have, and then we're going to be adding the do not show class from there. So we're going to use copy.classlist.remove, and we're going to be removing that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove it again. So now this time we need to wait for 0.8 seconds because our animation ends at 0.8 seconds. So we're going to use window.setTimeout, and here, so we're going to add a function which would basically add in again the do not show class to the copied class, the copied class div. So we're going to again add that, but when? Right after we have a 0.8 second ended. So when that goes down, we have this do not show class added to the copied text. Alright, so we can write 800 here, And as you can see, so I have written here the animation as 0.8 seconds, so we're gonna need to add 800 down there. Now when we save, when you click, you can see that it just works like the project. So yeah, there's that. So this is the project that we finally created, your own color palette, aka the color picker, exactly like the flat UI colors. So I hope you guys learned something new from this video. Now if you guys like this video, please like it, subscribe if you haven't, and turn the bell on so that you remain notified whenever I post a new video. And so yeah, and I'm also going to be using text shadow to the text copied which appears, so that when you click on a light color like this, your text is visible. So I'm going to be adding that. So yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you guys learned something new. So meet you guys in the next